If you're looking for nice budget webcams for your gaming and your streaming, packed with tons of features and not so expensive, then before you start looking for some of those more popular, easy to grab, well-known brands of cameras that you're probably paying too much for not so many features, then stop. Don't press checkout and buy just yet, because I have two new webcams on the market by OBSBOT, and those two cams are the Tiny SE and the Meet SE. Pretty awesome, budget-friendly 1080p 100 Hertz refresh rate cameras that look pretty fantastic. And let's be honest, some of those more popular, expensive brands that we all know, that are well known, are kind of a thing of the past, sort of, because, well, you're paying a premium price for not so many premium features, either in the hardware or the software. Yes, that is correct. And I'm going to show you right now exactly what I mean in this video with some popular brands. Well, some of the main popular brands, specifically Logitech. We're going to put these two webcams against the Logitech c930 and the Logitech c920, which are in the same exact price bracket as these two cameras. Now, when comparing these cameras, I just want to look at just a few of the main things that I think that a lot of you out there will be concerned with. One, well, we want to look at the resolution and the clarity of that resolution and what it looks like at 1080p, because not every 1080p is the same, considering that a lot of these cameras have different capture sensors. That's right. We want to look at things like the color reproduction, how it does with auto exposure, auto white balance, for example, and how it can kind of make the coloring look like. We want to look at things like the features that are packed into these cameras, what they can actually do on a hardware level, more or less. And of course, we want to look at the software and the software features and see what they can do on a software level. Yes, and then we want to, of course, look at what you're getting for your money. Looking at quick hardware spec rundown of these cameras, you have a 0.5-inch CMOS sensor. Same goes for the Meet SE. Both will have HDR, both have a nice 78-degree field of view, both have pretty good low light reproduction, low light capturing, both have pretty good autofocus. Is not an AI, some of that more modern fast autofocus like you're going to capture on the Tiny 2 Lite or the Tiny 2. Those autofocuses are super fast. Both will do some AI auto framing and auto tracking, right? With the Tiny SE tracking you on a gimbal, it can just pretty much track you walking and running all around. Plenty of zoom AI features with your hand gestures, zooming in and out. And with the Meet SE, you will have some auto framing and zooming in and zooming out with hand gestures. With the Logitech c930e, you're going to get a max of 1080p at 30 frames per second. That's the max you get. And the same goes for the c920. Both have the same frame rates. They have the same sensor. There's not a lot of information on the sensors these cameras actually use. They do not have HDR built into them, unfortunately, with Logitech cameras. Field of view is different on these two Logitech cameras. On the c920, you get about a 78-degree field of view, which is about the same as the OBSBOT cameras. You're gonna get a 90-degree field of view with the c930, which is wider than all of these cameras. Yes, so pretty good. Digital zoom on the c920 is about 1x or so, not much. But on the actual c930e, you get 4x, just like the OBSBOT cameras. All right, so without further ado, let's look at the cameras one by one, and then we'll put them side by side just so you can get a gist of what these cameras look like. And right now we are starting with the OBSBOT Meet SE. And this is the resolution and view you're gonna get out of box. HDR is in fact on, and it is running at 1080p 60 FPS. It's doing a great job at not blowing out those super white whites, and detail in the darks are all being kept in. So that's kind of what HDR is. See, with the blacks in the back, you can see a lot more detail. And if I get close, it'll do a good job at tracking my face. It's not the fastest zoom bracketing or focus bracketing, but it's fast enough. Switching over to the Tiny SE. This is also not tracking me right now, but it's also HDR, and this is the out-of-box look. Doing a great job at not blowing out the whites and the darks. Same thing. That's the real big difference with HDR and non-HDR. And you have a nice balance of color and exposure with all elements in your shot. The Logitechs don't have HDR. Now, again, I'm going to keep reiterating this a few times throughout this video. The same price bracket for all of these cameras, $69, $100, $129 for the Logitech c930e, which is more expensive than the OBSBOT Tiny SE. I'm gonna have some things to say about that at the end of this. This looks fantastic. Even when I get close, you'll see how it does a little bit of slowness with the focusing. And then if I go back, it's gonna keep me in focus, a little bit of pulsation with doing that focus finding and focus bracketing. So moving on to the c920. Here is the c920 set to 1080p. Where am I looking? Wrong camera. c920 set to 1080p, and same room environment, no HDR, and it has like this weird, cool blue tint. This light in the back is actually supposed to be magenta, like you see on the Tiny SE. As far as the resolution is concerned, the resolution is actually pretty clear and getting close. You see that it does a good job at finding the focus. I think it's pretty good actually, but that's about it. We'll get into zooming in later and see what the resolution looks like and all of that stuff. Switching over to the c930e. You get a bigger, wider 90-degree field of view here, which I think is pretty wide. So you got a lot more playground in the background for zooming in and getting a wider angled view or capture. I think it looks pretty good. It's a more natural color than the 920 here, which did some kind of weird blue tint, right? So I like the colors here, but no HDR. So we're kind of like getting a little bit of blown out in the whites there, as you can see. Same for the 920. That white right there is definitely getting blown out. Back to the 930. It looks decent. A little bit of a greenish tint to it, but it's okay. The focusing looks pretty decent. You get a lot of darkness, higher contrasts. So you might lose a little bit of the detail in the blacks. So that's kind of one thing to notice with non-HDR cameras. Now let's make a switch over to the quad display right here in your face, Techies and Gamers. I don't know which camera to look at, so choose a camera. I'm gonna choose the one in the middle. Not much to say about the c920 other than that the resolution looks okay. The c930e, as you can see, it's wider than all of these cameras, and I open my hands like that, you see the others get chopped off. And in this shot, you got both of my hands captured, but it's a little bit on the darker side. The Tiny SE, which really looks fantastic, and I think it looks the best out of the bunch. Yes, in terms of resolution, color reproduction, that HDR is fantastic, balancing my whites and darks, and the colors look a little bit more natural here with the background looking more blue and magenta, which is what I have going on in my room right now. Then there's the Meet SE, which is second place, obviously. Looks just as good with the whites being nice and balanced here as well with the darks. Good color reproduction, fantastic resolution. I'm not getting that dark color like you're getting up here with the c930e. A little bit of dark muddiness there. Let's look at the detail of the Meet SE when it focuses in on that close range. Looks good. The Tiny SE seems to be doing the best job there. Meet SE is just a little bit on the darker side of exposure. Logitech 930e is okay. I like the way that looks. And the c920, again, with that blue tint there, looks okay, I think. The c920, you see that jumping when it jumps trying to fix exposure. It's visual steps you can see there. Yeah, it does it fast enough and as well as focusing, but A little bit on the struggle side. Yep, you can see the steps there with the 930e jumping from shades of darkness to shades of brightness to compensate for that exposure. And the focus is somewhat kind of slow there as well. Let's go over to the Tiny SE. Okay, bit faster on the focus. You can see some of the movement as it's trying to focus. And let's see that exposure. Okay, that's done with exposure. Let's look at the Meet SE. Pretty good with focusing, not the fastest focus, but it does a decent job. Then I take it away. Takes a minute for the exposure to catch up. For whatever reason, I can't get the C930e to focus on this thing right here. Let's look a bit closer at what the resolutions look like when you zoom in, right? Because, well, they all look fantastic zoomed out like that. Nice crispy resolution at 1080p. Now, starting with the 920, you only get 1x zoom. So let's zoom that in 1x, and that's the max zoom you can zoom in. And well, hard to tell what the resolution looks like when it's zoomed in just at 1x, which is the max you can do. Let's go over to the 930e. You can do 4x on the C930e. And when we zoom all the way in, we can look at what that resolution kind of looks like, right? And you can see in some of the highlights here on the side of my temple, my eyebrows, not very resolved, right? All right, switching over to the OBSBOT. Let's zoom that in. The meat, wow, that is on 4x zoom. And you can see some of the real detail there in my skin and in my hair, my eyebrows. Everything is just way sharper on that Meet SE versus the 930e. Both 1080p. 1080p is not always 1080p all the time with camera to camera. Depends on your sensors and a bunch of other hardware tech built into it. Also software processing. The Tiny SE, and let's zoom that into 4x. And same with as the Meet, can see a lot of that detail in my skin, right? Looking side by side, they're pretty much they're about the same, honestly. And this is how much you can actually zoom in with these cameras, and they look pretty good at 4x. The OBSBOTs, that is. Look at what the C930e is doing. I'm blurry. I'm getting blurrier the more I move back. Let me back up a little bit and see what that looks like. Yeah. Look how blurry I am on that C930e and the sharpness I can maintain there with the two OBSBOT cameras. Switching over to another view here. Two cams here. We have the C930 and we have the Tiny SE. For some reason, the Logitech C930 is still $129 on the website. Back to the price thing. Yes, I don't know why. And you have the $99 OBSBOT Tiny SE. Look at the color reproduction, look at the resolution, look at the HDR, the contrast, right? Highlights and darks. I'm really just like dark and muted here on the C930, and well, the OBSBOT Tiny SE is looking fantastic right here in my flying face. All right, let's switch over to the other two cams. Again, here I feel like, honestly speaking, in terms of resolution, or at least in terms of darks and lights, maybe a little bit, the 920 is doing a better job than the I'm losing track of the names of the cameras. Then the C930e looks a bit better there. Let's look at the other comparison. Yeah, look at that. Focus is trying to find me. Look, the C920, poor thing, as I move around, is messing around with focus, and along with exposure, it's just kind of losing me altogether. Here's a little bit of low light. I turn out all the lights. Both those Logitech cameras are pretty dark on this side. I'm losing a lot of details due to the darkness. We can switch over to these two cameras, and right now we have the 930 and the Tiny SE. You'll see that there is a lot more contrast on the 930 versus with the 920 and the Meet SE. Just add that to the mix of what makes these OBSBOTs more worth it and better than these Logitech cameras. All right, techies and gamers, here we are with some software to look at for the Logitech cameras. There are two applications apparently. One a little bit smaller, I think it's a little bit more modern, not totally sure, which is called the Logitune, which you see here on the right of your screen. And it actually can see 4 cameras here. So the Logitune is cool because not only can it detect the Logitech cameras, it can also detect other cameras connected to your computer, and you can manage them in here just a little bit, just a few features in there. But then you have the Logitech capture application here on the left, and here's where you have a little bit more stuff going on, and you can actually record and I guess get your mic and everything directly off of this particular application. What I'm noticing while I'm using this application is, you see that? Did you see that? It like breaks up your video. So not only is it 30 refresh rate, within the software this happens. It doesn't happen outside using OBS. So I don't know what that's all about. Look at that. It's like some weird glitching that happens every so often. Yeah, not great. Looking right along, we have the option here to choose which camera to display. We have the Logitech 930e, and then we can switch over to the 920e. Do I have that artifact going with the 920? I don't. It seems like it's a fine, fresh 30 FPS at 1080p. You can control things like the frame rate, which we have going. It says anti-flicker 60 Hertz, but these cameras don't do 60 Hertz. So yeah. Exposure, I click that and I get actually nothing. You have things like autofocus. I don't know why you would not want to use autofocus with this little camera. Auto white balance. Now it's just making everything super purple. It's not even that purple in this room. Image settings, what advanced settings you get there? You get things like the brightness, you get the sharpness, which I wouldn't really recommend using any of this sharpness feature because it doesn't look great. If you had a chroma key going, you can set that up here. We'll turn that off. Get your little green screen going. And advanced mode is really just nothing other than flipping your picture horizontally or vertically. And then we have, if you see there's 2 options there on the right, you can just switch cameras quickly and go into the settings automatically. And it's the same thing down here, but down here you have more options to set the small screen. So these are 2 separate cameras. Then you have the switch of the cameras, and then you can kind of split screen them here. You can have a desktop view. Yes, you can do that with this application. Moving right along, we have some options here, filters, right? These filters are locked down. You're required to log in and create an account to unlock some of these filters. Is what it is. I just refuse to create yet another account just to use a little bit of camera features here. So we're going to bypass that. You can create a border if you wanted to. You can choose the border you would like, different colors. Transitions. So if I'm switching between one camera to the other, you get a weird transition there. It's slow and stuttery. Audio, you can set up your microphone so it does have the ability to pick up the particular mic you would like. Alt to set up shortcut keys to toggle specific things. And that's probably about the gist of what you could do with this application. Of course, you can record. And what up, Tickets and Gamers? You are now recording with the Logitech c930e webcam on this channel via the Logitech capture application. Is it good? I don't like it so much. I'm going away. If you go over to the Logitune application, we can go over to home. Agenda is disconnected. You got to sign into yet another I'm not signing in. You can sign in if you like. Here you got a few options if you wanted to use a third-party camera. You can control your camera or third-party cameras with the Logitune, which I think is the best feature of both of these apps, right? But is it really good? Because once you go into it, it's not really much you could do. Zoom in and maybe change some image settings. That's about it. Okay. And here we are with the OBSBOT software now. There's just too much features built into the OBSBOT sensor software to go over. If you want a super duper detailed breakdown of this application, leave the comment below and let me know. So just starting off with the OBSBOT, you can customize and add whatever microphone you got connected to your computer, be it the Tiny SE or the Meet SE, which is running right now. Right now, you're looking at HDR on the Tiny SE. Pretty balanced view here. It looks pretty normal as far as the way it actually looks in my room. And then you have your console, which you can control your gimbal, which I think you can't really do anything with the Meet SE because the Meet SE is not on a gimbal. It will only work if you are kind of zoomed in, and then you can kind of gimbal slide over like such, right? That's the way it works. Otherwise, when you are wide reset, there's no space for it to kind of auto frame and compensate for that space that's going around. So AI auto framing, pretty nice with the Meet SE. Does a good job of keeping you centered, right? Kind of works the way Apple does with center stage. Image, tons of image things you can do, from focus, exposure, white balance. Of course, I would keep some of that stuff on auto because it does a pretty good job on auto. And of course, the image stuff I just showed you, HDR on, HDR off. You can see what it looks like without HDR. I don't know if this is a more natural look, but either way, it still kind of looks better than the 920 or the 930. You turn on your zoom, right? So if you're back here, you can turn zoom on and you can zoom all the way in, and then you can use your hand gesture, zoom out. Zoom factor, you can set that automatically. So I have it set to 2x, so it zooms in a lot, but you can reduce the zoom factor to like 1.5. So that way, when you zoom in, it goes in 1.5 versus 2x, right? And then you can zoom back out. Very responsive. You got to be careful. Sometimes you move your hands and you just set off the gestures. So only use the gestures, turn them on when you need them. I never ever really use webcam mics. You always want to use a good desktop mic for a professional sound. Then if you wanted to take it a step further, you can put your cameras to sleep here. You can record locally, right, to your desktop, save it on your computer, and you get this very similar nice 60 hertz refresh rate, which looks fantastic. Beautification, tons of things you can do with filters. There's a lot of filters, black and white, soda. Some of these filters are actually pretty good. Other things you can do is retouch your face with the OBSBOT Center. And this only applies within the software. It's not gonna translate if you're recording via OBS, for example. So you'd have to record directly off of the OBSBOT to get all of the features, but some will stick as far as like settings, but a lot of these other features may not. Native, and then you have like the man, and then you have none. Kind of alters a little bit of the background as well. And then there's options to use a remote control with the OBSBOT devices to control your devices via remote. For example, for doing presentations, it has like this laser mode. You don't have to create an account to get access to all of the features in the OBSBOT Center. As you can see, I am not logged in, and you have access to every single feature in the application. That's right. So yeah, there you have it. What else is there to tell you? Nothing. All right, Tech is the Gamers, there you have it. 4 webcams, awesome for gaming, streaming, content creation, video conferencing. What do I think about the differences with regards of the clarity, resolution, the hardware, the features built into the software, the price point? Wow. Well, let's take a look at our cameras here. And I think that hands down, obviously, for the same price that you can get the Logitech cameras, you can get one of these OBSBOT cameras. I don't see a reason why I'd want to go with one of the Logitech cameras at this price point. It doesn't look as good as any of these OBSBOT cameras. In terms of resolution, the OBSBOT are going to win hands down. When you zoom in, you can see how sharp these cameras remain even at 4x. Well, the 920 only does 1x, but the 930 does 4x, just like the OBSBOT cameras, and it looked pretty bad. The exposure doesn't look good. Plug and play right now. This is the natural exposure of all of these cameras. The 930 is the darkest and does the worst with auto exposing here. Color is also much better on the OBSBOT cameras, as you can see right here in your face. Features, you got tons and tons of features in the OBSBOT camera, including those AI features with hand gestures, beautification, zoom, adjusting your colors, that sort of thing is just a lot more packed and granular than any of these Logitech softwares can do. Coming in at the same price is kind of a no-brainer for me in terms of what you're getting here. Logitech has been around for a long time, and you're possibly gonna get right now more support with Logitech services. That's probably the upside of running with Logitech. So yeah, pick yourself up a good camera here, Techies and Gamers. Either the Meet SE or the Tiny SE for 30 more bucks. You just get a little bit more features with regards to AI and full on auto tracking and auto tracking features. So that is probably the better way to go. If any of you would go with the Logitech cameras for any reason outside of the added support they would give, let me know in the comments. I'm interested in seeing why you'd still choose the Logitech. It really has no physical ability to like rotate or anything. It's just static. You're stuck and that's it. You can't go left and right. You can only go up and down. All right, Techies and Gamers, that's all I got for you today. If you're interested in these cameras, link in the description. All right, I'm done. I gotta go get ready for Valentine's Day. It's Valentine's Day and I'm going out for dinner with my wife. And if you don't like it, get your own wife. What?